Welcome to BIZ Talk.
How does the influence industry, some people call politics, work when it comes to the actual needs of the community, and how important is the small business sector and entrepreneurship in making things happen and making the community better? Today I'm talking to T. Rowe from America's SBDC, that's the National Small Business Development Center Network, and State Delegate James Proctor from Prince George's County, Maryland, to discuss this vital subject from a national and local perspective.
Welcome to BIZ Talk with Josh, with your host, Joshua I. Smith.
Welcome to the show. We have a show today of a good friend of mine over many years, T. Rowe, Charles T. Rowe, we call him T, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of America's SBDC. That's a new name to some people. It's not to T. T, what is America's SBDC? And I decided not to give the old name. I'll let you do that.
Well, Josh, what we've done is we've rebranded the Association of Small Business Development Centers because we needed to reflect what we really were, a nationwide network covering all of America, over 950 centers, stretching from Guam and the Marianas Islands to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands to Maine and every state in the Union.
So when you look at where you are, keep in mind, T, I'm a marketer, so that's 1,000. Okay.
Yeah.
You can say 957. I don't remember that. I remember 1,000.
1,000 it is.
All right, 1,000 will work, right?
Right.
Okay. When you look at what you're doing, where you're doing it, who you're doing it for, is there anything like this that has ever existed in the history of this country? And we're going to talk about the partnerships and the participants in this study. And ladies and gentlemen, if you really hear about Washington and you hear about what's not happening, and you apply that to America's SBDC program, the SBDC Network, Small Business Development Centers, that's not the case, because you grew because of the strength and richness of the participants who signed up to the same thing that you believed in, and it's probably one of the best effective relationships between federal, state, local universities that exist. Now, am I taking this too far?
No, you're absolutely right, Josh. We're coming up, actually, to be next year. We're in our 34th year. We'll have our 35th anniversary next July, I think it is. And we started out as a pilot program with just 6 states, colleges, and universities, and that was the whole idea, was to draw the experience and the knowledge from business schools, colleges, universities, their laboratories, and all of their experts out to Main Street and provide a collaborative effort between SBA, who's our primary federal funder, and our state and local partners and co-sponsors. So what we've developed over the years, obviously we started with those 6 centers, and we've now grown to 1,000 centers covering every state and territory in the United States.
Now, was there I say this because I know the answer, there was a model that was followed, wasn't it, in terms of...
Oh, absolutely.
And this model worked so well that people started applying it to business. Tell us about the model, and the agricultural arena.
Well, the model we've got is really very simple. I'll give you an easy, for instance, locally is at the University of Maryland. And we're headquartered at UMaryland College Park, and then we have outlying centers all across the state, because part of the deal, if you're a small business development center network, you've got to cover the entire state.
Now, is this for all universities, or just for certain universities or states?
The way it works is there's a host university in each state or region, because in California we've got 6, and in Texas we've got 4. And the host institution...
That's you said for normal states, right?
Right, right. The host institution...
Don't ever say Texas and California, and you can't introduce normalcy in that area.
Yeah, they're their own thing. But the host institution takes on the contract, the cooperative agreement with the Small Business Administration to provide these services across the entire state, and those services cover every facet of small business development, helping folks with financing, helping them with management.
Is there anyone too small, insignificant that can't approach it?
No, sir.
Okay.
I
want our listeners to hear this, T, because you hear about certain programs and you say, well, I'm just an individual with an idea, or I'm a small business. There's no one that's unqualified, if I can put it that way, to enter an SBDC network, right?
Right,
okay.
Exactly. About 40-some-odd% of the folks we deal with are what we call nascent entrepreneurs, which is a fancy way of saying a startup.
Now, you said you had NyQuil this weekend because of a cold.
Yeah.
This is not an effect of the NyQuil, is it?
No.
Okay.
That's an actual term. I didn't just make that up.
All right. You don't have to take responsibility. Huh?
Right.
All right.
And so we work with businesses at all levels, whether it's a small startup or a established business that's looking to expand. A lot of our folks see the sweet spot as you've been in business a couple of years and 5 to 10 employees, but honestly, we reach at both ends of the spectrum, so it's a bell curve, if you will.
Now, is there an age requirement? I mean, is there?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
And that's the amazing thing. Being located on college campuses, I think we're slowly starting to see more young people come in because they're interested, and a lot of them come into us having been volunteers through the business school that they're at. There'll be a business school student at, say, Wharton, which is the host institution in Pennsylvania, or the Eisenberg School in Massachusetts, and they'll have worked with their professors helping a small business, and then they'll want to start their own business.
Now, if you're at a school where you don't have an SBD center, what do you do? And you're one of those type students. What do you recommend to them?
Just go down the road, because with 1,000 centers, we have, you're not more than a half hour away.
That's interesting.
That's for sure, except of course, if you're in Alaska.
All right, another one of those special states.
Right, but then again, we've made a lot of effort on really trying to build up the online resources and the distance learning. We are developing, in conjunction with Global Classroom, probably the largest online business academy, if you will, in the world.
Wow.
And every SBDC is trying to get involved in providing content and curricula. And as well, we've got Franklin Covey and Microsoft coming in to help us. It's a fascinating tool because it lets people learn things at their own pace and then have that resource, the person to go to as a fallback.
So no matter who you are.
Right, no matter who you are.
If you have an interest in an idea, or if you start a business, you have access to a small business development center.
You betcha.
Now, in terms of how this can work, what's the secret sauce to what you do versus all other resources out there? And we want to talk about that model. I don't want to get away from that because that extension model was just brilliant,
right.
And it works so well. Tell us a little bit about that, and then let's talk about
that's the great thing about an SBDC being with the college or university,
right.
Is it's that breadth of knowledge. It's not just going in to get help with a business plan. It's getting the financing help and then saying, I have a real question about how my supply chain and warehousing works,
mm-hmm.
and finding the answers there. It's that it's that full service aspect of it.
They not only have boots on the ground, they have feet, tennis shoes, and everything else, right?
Everything else. If they don't know the answer right there, they will find it for you.
And they have the thing that I think really makes you unique. Through all of these resources and the participation of your partnership with the universities, they have examples where if they don't know it, they can actually see an example of what they want to do somewhere in that arena a lot easier and more economical than trying to do a search long distance or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They can either meet someone or they can there's some kind of organization, but the access to gain knowledge about your idea and your business is around you everywhere.
Absolutely. And most of our counselors, the folks who work at the SBDCs, and they're about 5,000 strong, are serial entrepreneurs or former business owners and bankers. These are people. They're not. It's not just an ivory tower bunch. It's people with real Main Street experience and access.
Now, if I have experience, let's say I'm a banker, and it's fine. I like what I'm doing, but I really want to add a little more value to and exposure. How do I approach an SBD center, and how does that process work?
Well, honestly, that's a great topic, Josh, because our counselors, our center directors are active in the community, and they're always trying to create relationships with members of the lending community, because that's really how they can help get their clients to the right folks. And we're always working on this constantly to try and expand the access, and whether it's a 504 lender, the folks in NADCO, or the 7A lenders from SBA, or the community bankers throughout the country, the thousands of them. We're always trying to develop relationships with them that helps get folks past that decline. We get so many folks who come into us and they've been declined and they just don't understand.
And they're psychologically damaged.
Well, yeah, they're frustrated is a good word for it.
Yeah.
And it's because, as I like to put it, they don't necessarily speak banker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we do. We sit down with them, and we know the bankers, and we know the questions that they have and what they're not seeing or what they need to see in a loan package. And that's the frustration.
And how the bankers think.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you approach it.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, when you look at people that come to you, how much of this whole process evolves around loans? How important is that? It's not everything, but it's a very valuable element of what your centers do and your counselors do. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's no joke that capital is the lifeblood of any business.
Right.
And so we've helped small businesses access, just last year alone, about $4.4 billion worth of lending.
What was that?
$4.4 billion with a B. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody who comes to an SBDC is going to be able to get help and get a loan, but we're very successful with helping people get to the place where they can. And sometimes you don't even need the loan. We've had so many examples of clients who come in and it's like, you don't need a loan. You need a collection system. People owe you money.
Yeah. Or you need to, before you go to the bank, there are other sources. Mm-hmm. You've got to be convincing in your idea or your project or whatever it is, and you've got to, put your money where your mouth is. And in terms of, if you need money, if you go with a new idea and you haven't put up a dime, that's going to be a short conversation.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes, honestly, the biggest benefit we can give to someone is to say, wow, you are not ready.
Yeah.
And we'll help you get ready, but don't go mortgage your house.
Yeah. Well, and there's something that T, I think people underestimate. I don't know how many tries it takes to get a success, but the people that I know didn't do it on the first try. It was that tenacity that even if you got turned down or even embarrassed, you're so determined that you then use that experience to improve the next step and the next step. Talk to our audience about that tenacity. You know, you can go to counselors, but at the end of the day, it's up to you.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have that commitment and that tenacity to stick to it, and even though something was bad, it's not bad if you're going to use it in the next step. It's bad if you're going to stop.
Right.
So talk to us about that.
Well, and the value of our counseling is it's not sitting in a classroom. It's one-on-one counseling, and it's part of it is making sure that a person is really committed, because you've got to really, honestly, to be a successful small business person, devote your heart, soul, and everything into it. It's a long struggle sometimes. It's just not, you read in the paper, $19 billion to buy some app.
Right.
Well, that's not normal. That's like, hitting the Powerball.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say
Except
that.
I think the odds for the Powerball might be slightly better.
Yeah. Or getting hit by lightning might be better.
Or hit on the head with a meteor. But it's hard work, and our folks know that, and they'll spend the time. When we look at our clients, we honestly break them down into what we call our long-term, in-depth clients, and those are the people we spend real hours with, and those are the folks who are committed. And you've got to be committed, because that's, frankly, how you're successful in anything in life.
We're talking to T. Rowe, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of America's SBDC, the top organization that exists, and probably the most efficient that I've ever known. T, when we look at what's happening today, and we look at, the jobs, and somehow we conclude based on jobs, unemployment, how things are going, and yet in these scenarios, everybody mentions small business, how important it is. But, there are a lot of people talking, and there are fewer people doing. You're doing. Give us some advice in terms of what we need to do, because one of the biggest and strongest elements, you talk about the university partnership and the university and college partnership, they're already committed, and they bring so much to the table. It's not just the federal government putting money out, paying for people. Tell us how that proportion works and why that's so efficient.
Well, we're very grateful to Congress, who always sees us as a great value add. I mean, the return on investment, we can show them that for every federal dollar they're giving us, we're $2 in revenue is coming back into the federal government from small business activity, and that's a great base for us. But on top of that, all of the in-kind contribution from the colleges and universities really doubles and triples the effectiveness and really helps us leverage what we do. So the federal dollars come in, but the state and local support, the college and university support for the staff, office spaces, computers, you name it, is a huge cooperative partnership.
Huge, yes. You couldn't replicate that.
Oh, it'd be a heck of a job.
No, you really couldn't, because the universities that are doing well are more intense and continuing that. How has this whole concern? And I was talking about jobs and entrepreneurship. These young, I won't say kids, but these young people recognize it's not the same track as their fathers and grandfathers. It's not getting the gold watch after 50 years of retirement. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but it's not at the proportion that it used to be. what are they seeing? And I think this also ties into why the SBDC centers are so effective. They get it. They understand that for me to get there, I've got to take this entrepreneurial path, or certainly a different path leading to what I want to create in order to feed my families and educate my kids.
Right, and in so many ways, we've got a lot of the cutting edge, I guess, if you want to call it that, information that they're looking for. We get folks coming in, and they may be young people working on a new internet site or an app or something like that. But very often it's just they've come up with a better way of making barbecue, craft brewing beer, amazing things. But for us, it's all about how can we make your business more efficient, and how can we work with all of our amazing partners. And we have some outstanding private sector partners. Intuit, the company that makes QuickBooks Online and TurboTax, and then Microsoft and their Office 365 products, and Google, who we've done all around the country, Get Your Business Online events. We work with all sorts, and that's only a tip of the iceberg for our partners, Sage Software, Peachtree, Franklin Covey, the list goes on. Working with all of those folks to help energize small businesses and help get all those tools out to small business people, and make those real tech-savvy tools available to this younger generation that knows that and understands it and wants to be able to look at it all online and build a dashboard and say, hey, here's my business.
Now, no matter what business you go in, and please help us on this, because I've had a mindset on this that if it's not that paper doesn't work, but if you don't use the tools that others use, whether they're your clients or what have you, you're not going to be successful. You submit a proposal now on paper, that might be fine for you, but it may not be what's needed in order to receive, your bid. You've got to be savvy in the networking and social media and whatever the digital requirements are of your clients. How do you help your clients in that regard? I mean, you just need to know how to use this. Is there a business that is an exception to that, T?
Honestly, no. I mean, you can't avoid it now. I don't know how you can run a business.
I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just the way it is, right?
That's the way the world works, and it's everything from getting products to people all over the world. We spend so much time now working on exports, and that's been a big push within the SBDC community, because we're telling our folks, you have to look outside. You have to remember that 95% of the world's consumers are outside of our borders, and we have to think, above and beyond. And I'll give you an example. In Illinois recently, we were working with a company, and the last thing you think of is high tech, but that's not true. It's Rendleman's Orchards, and they've got 100-year-old farm, family farm, 88 acres, but you've got to be able to use modern methods and modern technology, food safety programs, tracing every piece of fruit they send out from point A to point B, and that's made them probably one of the biggest peach producers in the country. And, you've got a legacy of the family business there, but that family business changes. And so now the current generation, they're high tech, and how do we get our products out, and how do we do it efficiently and using all the technology that's available.
And this is really where the focus and the strength and the abilities of these universities come into play too, because they're aware of this. You have local access to this kind of expertise and this kind of exposure, and so the investment on the part of the individuals is very little, if anything.
Oh yeah, no. What we're asking them to invest in is the time and the learning, the education. That's what we're all about. And it's because we're based in so many colleges and universities. We're an education-based program.
But when you look at where things are going, and you see, what has to be done, does this, when you go to Congress and you talk to the legislators and the decision makers about this kind of program, I mean, it's a bargain, but doesn't it really have to be bigger, T? I mean, is it really, it's doing a great job, and you're talking about 1 million businesses a year. Should you be doing 5? Where should we be in relation to where the requirements are? And you look at 90% of the buyers are outside this country. And is there a proportion when you talk to legislators that says we need to be on another level in order to satisfy the changing requirements that's taking place in this country?
Well, Josh, I think there's always room for growth, and and we look at it that way too. But we're also the kind of people, you don't want to be like a boa constrictor eating a pig. We're conscious about,
takes you out of action for a while.
Yeah, we're conscious about the need to grow and expand our outreach because we end up with a backlog of trying to get to all the clients we have. At the same time, we're very cognizant of the restraints on federal spending and the restraints that our colleges and universities have. What we're trying to do is we grow to meet demand and to meet needs as reasonably as we can. And, we are always trying to work with our private sector partners to try and leverage what we already do just a little bit more.
You do that well. I mean, you really do. I was looking at some of your statistics in terms of the number of participants, and I saw that 44% of the participants were women, and 28% were minorities. And when you look at where the needs are, do you feel good about addressing these areas? I mean, this is not against white males. There's no negative here.
No,
it's just feeding the positive in terms of where
right.
the needs really exist in the country.
Right, and I think one of the areas we've really been working hard on is meeting the needs of our returning transitioning servicemen and women.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
That's an area where we've been working with the SBA. They have the Boots to Business program, and we've been working very hard with them on that. And that is what they call part of the TAP, the Transition Assistance Program. And that's that first touch with the servicemen and women as they're beginning to transition from military service to civilian life. What are their goals? What are their interests? Because we find about 20% of them are interested in owning their own businesses.
Yeah.
And for us, it's letting them know the opportunities that are out there and letting them know the resources that are available.
You've got, about 9% is veterans, so
yeah,
I commend you for that.
Yeah, about 9 or 10%.
Yeah.
We'd like to have more. We might actually, because a lot of folks don't necessarily identify as veterans, but
T, we've got to give access information. You have such impressive information on your website. We're talking to T. Rowe, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of America's SBDC. Give us your access information, my friend, because it's phenomenal. Your blog sites are award-winning. You go, man.
It's www.asbdc-us.org, and of course there are through that, you can get to every website in our network, and of course that we have our state networks, which I don't have time to mention all of them.
Well, we're going to, I just said to T, you've got to be on more often. We want to get some examples on a regular basis, so you're going to be hearing from America's SBDC and T. Rowe more in the future, because it's a phenomenal organization. T, thank you. Continued good luck, continued success, and just keep doing what you're doing, my friend.
Thank you, Josh. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
And join us next week for a great show. I know you'll enjoy it. Take care.
Welcome back to the show. In this segment of the show, we're going to be talking about the local community and small business, and how people who are in the influence business, that is politicians, how they deal with that. My guest today is a very, very special long-term friend, Mr. James Proctor, who is the state delegate for Prince George's County and Calvert County, Maryland, and the House of Delegates. Jim, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you. You know, I focus on small business and entrepreneurship, as you know, but you know what I haven't done enough of, quite frankly, Jim, is talked about the people who influence the policies in the local communities regarding small business, and that's why I said I've got to get busy, because that's an important element of society that's never talked about. Tell us, from your perspective, you were an educator for what, over 30 years?
Yes, with the Prince George's County school system.
And you were 17 years a principal of a high school, correct?
Middle school.
Middle school.
Well, junior high, and then we converted them to middle schools.
And you've lived to talk about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you've been in the legislature for what, 24 years now? 24
years.
Man, that's amazing. Now, tell me, from your perspective, I know you took an elementary education at Bowie State. How do you feel, from your perspective, education, community, and small business and viability in the communities? Give us your take on that, Jim.
Well, let me just say this, that I think in many ways people don't give education of the local education program enough credit. When businesses look for places that they're going to settle, establish their businesses, they look for places that have people that are going to be able to work in their business, people who are trained, people who are able to carry out all of the duties and programs and whatever's necessary to build their business. So, education of the community is very, very important. I think Prince George's County has a fine educational process. To be truthful, our test scores have not always been the greatest, but we have been very successful with many, many programs that we have in Prince George's County, and our children are learning. We see improvements all the time. So when you talk about business, where businesses want to locate, they want to locate where the educational process is good, so that any employees that they have, want to make sure that they have their families have good schools, and more importantly, they can get good employees out of them.
Jim, when you mentioned that it's coming along, and I hear that, and I'm pleased with that, but as you say, there have been some challenges throughout the years that have been publicized and covered in media quite significantly. Tell us, Jim, how has not having the elements in place to the degree that you're talking about today, and we're talking progress, how has that hurt you in terms of business?
Well, let's take one big project that we have in the county that everybody is looking at now for the revenue, and also to let's say heighten our county, and that's National Harbor. Before we had National Harbor, we didn't have any big businesses or big projects being built in Prince George's County. They were going to Montgomery County, Howard County, or they were going over to Fairfax, Virginia, Arlington, and so forth. We were being left out in many cases. But the fact that we have the National Harbor Project in there proves that we are able to handle big projects and bring a lot of businesses to the to our county.
So how does the education element pour into that in terms of, as we're looking at going forward, how does that all play together?
Well, let's take this as an example. You know that over there, if I use National Harbor, and I'm using that only because that's our largest successful program or project that we've had in a long time. And if you look at that, the businesses that are coming in there, a lot of hospitality. They've worked with the community colleges to offer the programs to train the people that they need to work in their establishments. And that's what businesses look at. They look at, is there something available like the community colleges that could train the people, the workforce that they need for building their businesses.
So when it comes to what businesses want, National Harbor is a great example. How in your job, I know that you are vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, and you've had a number of key positions as you currently do, and you have relationships. We'll talk about that a little later because that's so important in getting things done. When something needs to be done for the business sector, how does that pass your desk, and how does that cross your desk, and how does that create an agenda item for you as a state delegate? What do you then do to make this happen?
Well, if we take it at the really local level, we look at the county executive. Executive will let the delegation and key people within the Prince George's delegation know about what the projects that they're expecting, what they want to work on, what they're trying to attract to Prince George's County, and ask for their help in various ways. Now, the help might be as simple as providing educational funds. It might be that we need to work with transportation to build some roads, like we did at National Harbor, to make sure that the project has the right access. There are any number of ways that we have to do, working with the Chamber of Commerce to look at how various small businesses can help within this big project. We work with all these people, but as I said, it starts basically with the county executive and the council to let us know what we want to do first for the county and how whatever the project is going to benefit the county. So we start with that. And then we talk to various businesses to find out where the problems are, what they need to help with this, and then we work toward getting funds or getting the help, whatever it is. Maybe DBED, the Department of Business and Economic Development, will have to use their expertise in the particular problem. So there are many, many factors that you try to use, but main thing is you try to bring in everybody. You don't want to exclude anybody.
All right, as I said, we're going to talk about relationships, but I want to stay on this theme in terms of there's a need out there. You mentioned roads. People don't realize that without roads, without infrastructure, without the things that we see and take for granted, businesses won't come, they can't grow, and obviously it's not going to be a thriving thing. And you, as a state delegate representing the local area in the state, you have to worry about these things, and you then have to go to the individuals. You know the people, what they do. You know the history. How important is that role? And quite frankly, I won't call you Roger Dangerfield, Jim, but you don't. State delegates like yourself and local politicians who are fully involved in the process of supporting businesses and the infrastructure and the economy aren't recognized. It's always the federal government, and it's always something, as they say, breaking news kind of thing, and it gets lost in terms of what happens in these local communities. And you're giving us the reality in terms of what has to be done for one project, but this one project's going to feed a lot of other small businesses. It's going to create a heck of a lot of jobs, but unless you do what you do, it's not going to happen, right?
Right. We have, you're talking about the small businesses. We have really worked with the state government to make sure that state contracts, at least, and with that, encourage the local governments to make sure that their contracts include a certain percentage of minority and women-owned businesses. And to show you, as far as we raised the percentage of state contracts for minority and women-owned businesses to 25% a few years ago. It had been around 9 to 12 for about umpteen years.
Yeah, I was involved in that, and that was quite a transition. Go ahead.
Yeah, but one thing where I think people were pushing for around 14%, and two groups got together: the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus and the Women's Caucus. We got together and we pushed for 25% state contracts. Well, it wasn't going anywhere. So what we did was we walked off the floor of the House of Delegates when the bill came up to have it at 14%.
Okay.
And we said, we're not coming back on the floor until we get that agreement of 25%. Now, when we walked off the floor, to say it like it is, I mean, we're adults talking, to say it like it is, there weren't 71 white men on that floor to pass that bill. They couldn't do it. You need 71 votes. And when we walked off, the women and the Black Caucus, which also includes women, but anyway, the Black Caucus and the Women's Caucus, when we walked off the floor, they didn't have 71 votes to pass anything. So in order to pass any type of bill, they had to come back to us. And we used that influence, or our numbers, to make sure that that was taken care of. But we have to look at those things, because when we're trying to help businesses, in many cases, the small businesses are really the minority-owned or women-owned, which is also minority, but it's almost like redundant. But still, we have to look at that with women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. We have to make sure that they're taken care of, because the big businesses will swallow them up. They'll get all the contracts and everything because they're able to outbid the small businesses. But by increasing the number of required percentage of minority and women-owned businesses to 25%, it's helped tremendously.
Jim, one of the things that I've seen and in my particular long history is that talking to you is a pleasure, and I really mean that, because you work hard, you stay abreast of the issues, and you bring the enthusiasm and the credibility of your relationships to the table. Not everyone is like that, and one of the disappointments that I've experienced, Jim, is so many people in the local legislatures or local politicians. They have a sense of what they're doing from a political perspective, but they don't have an appreciation or the kind of savvy about business. For example, I remember a situation where this particular legislature told a group that, this was happening and how exciting it was. The problem was the timing for the situation had already gone, and in this case it was a she. She wasn't even sensitive to the timing for procurement. You just don't say, well, you can bid on it at a certain time because those working prior to that are going to have an advantage. You got to be sensitive to the process. What is your take on the savvy and the understanding that local politicians have regarding business in general, in particular the issues and the problems that local and small businesses face?
Well, first of all, you've got to go after you can't rely on people just walking in your door. You got to go out and look for the people and bring them in your door. Now, that's the way I look at it. And being aware of all the things that are happening within the county, not just as government projects, but private contractors, private developers, and so forth, being aware of what's going on in the community so that you can get possibly a piece of the action. And for doing that, you've got to go out to the community. That's why, like the Chamber of Commerce is so important. If your local Chamber of Commerce is doing its job, it is really advertising all of the possibilities that will be happening within your particular community or the county as a whole, or even state. Some state projects that it might not even be in your county, but it's something that you might have an expertise in, and you can bid on that, or if you're aware of it, bid on it, or get in with some people who are bidding on it and form a coalition to bid on it. It might be in Baltimore, you're in Prince George's County or Montgomery County, but there's a project going on in Baltimore City that would be a good thing for your business. And while that project might possibly be a little bit too big for you as far as your business is concerned, but you got people out there that have similar businesses or can put together, along with you, a coalition to bid on those projects. And that way everybody can have a piece. But you've got to work together. It's just like in the legislature. None of us do this by ourselves. We're constantly forming coalitions of people to work with you. I mean, I'm a Democrat, but I work with Republicans in the legislature just like I work with the Democrats, because I know that I need X number of votes for whether it's in a subcommittee or a committee or on the floor of the House of Delegates. I need X amount of votes, and I'm always looking for the votes that are going to carry my project through.
We're talking with Delegate James Proctor, Jr. He is District 27A, covering Calvert and Prince George's County and the Maryland House of Delegates, and been a legislator for 24 years now. Jim, this is key, and just as I kind of was critical of some local politicians who aren't savvy, I'm also critical of business people who don't take the time to understand the process. How many times have they come to you and say, I want a contract? Well, that's fine. People in hell want ice water, right? As far as that goes.
Yes.
But when you look at that, how do you then assess the savvy and understanding of the process on the part of the businesses? I know you talked about the Chamber, and that's a great organization that's doing great things, and that's true locally in all areas in the country, we hope, but certainly that structure exists. But how do you assess the small business people, the minority women-owned business people, and their savvy of what has to be done to get things done and to get opportunities?
Well, when I have people that come to me to talk about their businesses or their projects, things they want to work on, I try to put them in with people that are familiar with that part or that phase of the business. If they say that they don't know how to get to have government contracts, I put them in with people that with DBED, the Department of Business and Economic Development. I worked on a project with a local person, a person who lives just a short distance from me, who has a meat plant in Pennsylvania, and he wanted to move to Maryland. And so his problem was that he wasn't able to get financing or locations and different things to help him get started. Well, I put him together with DBED, and we met several times in my office. Had a representative from DBED to come to my office and meet with him. And we talked about all sorts of things that he would need to do. We worked on that project, I guess about 6 months to it's close to a year. Unfortunately, he couldn't sell his business, the projects, and all the things he had in Pennsylvania to complete the deal, and that part was what was holding him back more so than the help he was getting in Maryland. He just could not swing that part, and he was not able to do it. But the fact is, he thanked me for this, that I put him in touch with the right people to start with so that he could meet whoever else it was necessary for him to meet with. His problem was in moving his plant was that he just couldn't sell his facility, and he tried, but he could just. It's a couple of years ago, during the recession that we've had, and how the market has been for real estate sales and so forth. So it just could not work. He could not.
But you said something that I think is extremely valuable for our listeners. And I think it shows in summation in so many ways the value that a savvy local politician, certainly in this case a delegate or whatever position, can bring to the table. You said you had the person from the Department of Business and Economic Development in the state of Maryland come to your office to meet with your client, your constituent.
Right.
That's a mouthful. I mean, that tells everything. That tells A, you got the juice to make that happen. B, you have the relationship to make that happen. And C, you created the forum for a tremendous business opportunity that if this person had to do it on his own, he would have been running for the next 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
It just doesn't work.
So longer.
So, when you talk about that, and I hope our audience understands the value that savvy and diligent and dedicated local politicians have in the process of seeking business. Now, do you see that it's getting better, Jim? What's your assessment? Because I know your nosy is all get out, so I know that you don't miss anything, and that's kind of a compliment, my friend. So,
well, thank you.
We're still kicking, Jim. So we must be doing something right. So, what's your assessment, Jim?
Well, I think it's getting better. I really do, but I still believe we have a long ways to go. A lot of our politicians, I'll call them that. I like to think representative is better than politician.
I like that too.
People say to me something about politician. I said, well, I'm an educator who happens to be in the Maryland House of Delegates. That's the way I like to refrain it.
So instead of politician, what do you call him now?
I said I'm an educator who happens to be in the House of Delegates.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I know I found out a long time ago when I got into this business that you got to know who's who within. I'm a state delegate, so my primary function is to know everybody in the state government that can help my constituents in Prince George's or Calvert County. Now, I also am a resident of Prince George's County, so I want to know everybody in Prince George's County that can help my constituents. So you see, I think those are the two things that the good state representative should know when he or she takes office. And from there, when somebody presents a problem to them, you can solve the problem. I mean, I could tell you, and I'm not going to do it for your show because it would take too much time, but I could tell you stories after stories of experiences that I've had that have worked for people because in my position, I have gotten to know the right people to go to. I'll give you an example. I'm an educator. I'll use one of those examples. I've had any number of times students who are really eligible or should have been eligible for a particular school in our public higher education system, and the parents have come to me and said, I could not get my child in this school, and because they rejected him, and I want him to go to this school for this reason or that reason, and I look at why the child was rejected, and if it's something that is really below the margin, like University of Maryland as an example, they want a high number, I think like 1,600 or so on the SAT scores before they will allow their students to come in. Well, if you've got a student that's got 1,500 on the SAT scores, they reject them. And when they reject them, that's it. It's final. But sometimes you can use other things to encourage the president or the admissions officer to allow that student to come in anyway. I don't want it to think that it's simply because I have the budget of the University of Maryland system, and all the presidents have to come to me for their budgets. I want to believe it's that I've been able to convince some of the presidents that it's good for them to allow those students into their school because they have certain qualities that would be beneficial to that public institution.
Well, you know, what you're talking about, we refer to it as you got to know the game. I mean, it's not a game, obviously, but there are rules, and then there are rules, and then there's influence on the rules.
Correct.
And one of the things that we look at from the standpoint of small business and minority business development, women business development, is understanding that there are so many opportunities. You mentioned state legislatures. You're a state delegate. This is a very powerful position that gets no visibility. Yet, in our discussion, you're talking about people on the local, state, as well as I happen to know you know people on the national, but you deal in the local, regional, state level. This is invaluable in terms of getting things done. Why is it, do you think, that delegates like yourself that play such a pivotal role in terms of business development progress get such little visibility? What is it about you guys that nobody wants to talk about, Jim?
Well, I can't really say. Let me just say that in many cases, we're just not out in the business community at attending the business functions. You know, I mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, but I know there are a lot of associations assigned to, you know, that most of the areas have, and especially particularly your field. There are associations out there for just about everything, but we don't necessarily participate in that area. We try to when it's necessary, but we just don't go out and I attend different meetings every now and then, but I don't make it a habit personally of attending every Chamber of Commerce meeting, every Lions Club meeting, every, you know, if you follow what I'm saying.
But you know the key people in those areas.
Well, yeah, I mean, I go sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And more importantly, they know you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And well, I don't go someplace and not try to make my presence known. You know, I go there to make my presence known, and so I get to know the key people. They get to know me, and when it's necessary to try to help your constituents, you know the players. So that's what I try to do. Now, a lot of our other state delegates, well, they've got most of them have full-time jobs that they've got to, you know, make sure that they're functioning well in, and sometimes they don't have the time to do the extra things. But I do things like going to my civic association meetings, homeowner association meetings, any of the local meetings that I can go to. I'm there constantly. I'm 3-4 nights a week. I'm at some meeting with one of my local area communities.
Well, one of the reasons why I picked you out was not by lottery, my friend, is because we've got to and I've got to do a better job of making sure that the listeners are aware of the influence, how things are influenced, whether it's policies. You mentioned mentioned the National Harbor, the opportunities, the $1 billion project that's going to spawn so many business and support business growth. This is what it's all about. I've been talking to a great guy, James Proctor, who is in the House of Delegates. He's a delegate in the Maryland House of Delegates, representing Calvert and Prince George's County. A savvy individual. Jim, I know they'll get you when they need to. You want to give your contact information real quick?
Well, yeah, you can contact me with James-Proctor at md.us as for email. My office number is 301-858-3083.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. This has been great discussion and telling it like it is. You've been listening to Biz Talk with Josh. Tune in again next week for another great show. Meanwhile, have a great day.
Be safe, be sound, and be successful.
You've been listening to Biz Talk with Josh. Tune in when Joshua and his guests will discuss more business matters of importance to entrepreneurs and small business owners.